Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Dave Lochran, Adam Scher, and Awesemo himself, Alex Baker. Boys, we've got started with a 15 gamer on FanDuel and a 13 gamer on DraftKings, and of course on Yahoo. But now with all of this news, Alex, regarding this Kansas City and White Sox game, which is coming after their suspended game, well, DraftKings removed it entirely. So now we have 12 on DraftKings. And FanDuel, last I looked, let me refresh here just to make sure they still have this the way it was earlier. FanDuel's basically saying if the game starts before it's scheduled to, they don't get any points. But if it goes off on time or after that, yep, here it's still here, then they will get their regular points. So what a wild way of doing things on tonight's slate.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think as far as the player experience, not the greatest experience trying to figure out if this game is going to go off before the scheduled start time. But as DFS players, I think that's just one more edge we have tonight. And I did the math. The average game is just a little bit less than 3 hours. They have a little bit less than 4.5 innings to play. So all in all, it should take about an hour and a half to finish the game. The first pitch is going to be 30 minutes later. So you're looking at a game that's going to start on average around like 6:45 local time, so 7:45 Eastern. So the odds are pretty good this game doesn't count at all. So I think they should keep that in mind when you're making your lineups, and hopefully some other people will realize that this game more than likely won't count at all.
All right, Alex or Adam, I'll ask you. I guess the one question here, though, it would be there is still a scheduled start time that they have on this game. So even if it does finish, say, 7:30 Eastern time, are they going to start immediately afterwards? You still, I mean, in terms of attendance, how are you figuring attendance out? I mean, what are you going to funnel people out and then funnel people in that have tickets? I mean, it's definitely an interesting way of looking at it, but I was almost thinking that they'd be starting later unless they go back to back. It's a hard one to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think Alex said that the second game starts 30 minutes after the end of the first one. So I guess pay attention to how fast the first game's going. I mean, it makes no sense the way FanDuel did it. But.
Nope. You're better off just eliminating it altogether. But because we have FanDuel inexplicably adding the pre-7 p.m. games, the 6:35 and 6:40 between the Padres, Yankees, Pirates, Reds. Well, here we are starting early to make sure that we can jam all of that in. So we'll start with those first. Adam.
Lofty. Did Yahoo say anything about what they're doing?
So when I last looked, no. But no, there's nothing on the actual contest pages. I guess we could look in the lobby to see if there's anything. You haven't seen anything, have you, Alex?
No, but what sites have done in the past sometimes games have their first pitch before scheduled time, and pretty much always the game has locked at the first pitch, even if it was before the game time. So I'm really surprised FanDuel took that line for tonight, but I would expect that's what Yahoo will do as well, but you never know, I guess.
All right. Well, I guess we'll find out. Let's start with these early games, Padres and Yankees in Yankee Stadium. And let me be clear before we get into any of this. There is some serious weather on the east or the northeast. So as of now, it looks like a lot of these games are going to be clear. Boston looking like it could be an issue. But aside from that, I mean, I look on the radar and it doesn't look good, but from everything I've been looking at, as far as the other games in the Northeast go, it seems like we should be okay, at least for now. If you guys have any opinions, we can talk about it once we get to those games. We'll just work our way through it. But Adam, let's start with the Padres and the Yankees. We've got Masahiro Tanaka and Eric Lauer. Yankee Stadium. Obviously, a high total for the Yankees against Lauer. And Tanaka's actually seen his swinging strike rate rise pretty dramatically over his last 4 or 5 games, coming up in line with what we saw last season. Earlier in the season, it was looking rough. He's had some tough matchups, but he's also one of the, and I said it this morning, he's one of the more enigmatic pitchers in baseball. You never really know what you're going to get from Masahiro Tanaka. So now he's got a matchup against the Padres team that, against righties, is sure to strike out at a pretty high clip. Where do you stand on this pitching matchup?
Yeah, I think Tanaka is one of the better pitchers on FanDuel. He's reasonably priced at 9,600. Has a nice strikeout matchup against San Diego, one of the highest strikeout percentages in baseball against right-handed pitching. And like you said, the swinging strike stuff's come back up for Tanaka in recent starts. His splitters had better results, and that's a key pitch for him as far as getting strikeouts go. So it seems like he's maybe returning to what we saw last year, where he had some of the better swing and miss stuff in baseball. He got a lot of strikeouts, and he'd run into some issues with home runs, but the upside was always there, which we hadn't seen for the beginning of this year. So I think he is one of the better options on FanDuel. What does throw it off a little bit is that you have Rich Hill for $800 less. I think that from a point per dollar standpoint, Hill's the guy. But in tournaments, if people are going to go to Hill, you clearly can go to Tanaka, with at a similar price point with similar upside. So I like him quite a bit there.
Yeah, and we'll definitely get into an in-depth conversation with Rich Hill, because his pricing from site to site surely changes his value. What are your thoughts on this pitching matchup, Alex?
I think that Tanaka, so far this year, he's been about an average pitcher, 23% K rate. Padres strikeout team 22.5% with their projected lineup, just lower than average. So I think, given they have a 4.4 team total, all in all, you're getting an average kind of matchup. I do notice on Yahoo. Oh wait, this game's not on the Yahoo main slate. So
no, just FanDuel.
Yeah, FanDuel. He's 7% owned, so pretty moderate ownership. I don't think there's anything going for him over a guy like Rich Hill, other than just the fact that he's going to be a little bit more sneaky.
What are you doing with bats in this one? Any interest in picking on Eric Lauer here?
I think the Yankees, they have a 5.6 team total, which is appealing. The team ownership is 4.7%, which is a little bit less than their chance to be in the top stack. And maybe a little bit fewer people will go to it because it is the 6:30 game and it's not being covered on a lot of content. But on the other hand, maybe a lot of the New York Yankees fans are just going to play on FanDuel tonight instead of DraftKings, driving the ownership up a little bit. The prices don't seem especially good. Point per dollar, I have them at 3.2 FanDuel points per dollar, which is lower than average. One standout bat is Kendrys Morales. He hasn't really done much so far, but his price is way lower than the rest of the team, so I think you could go there as a one-off.
All right, what about you, Adam? We clearly have high totals here, as expected. Yankees are always going to carry a high total into a game like this, especially at home, especially against a league average left-hander. Are you getting to heavy Yankee exposure on this FanDuel slate?
I agree with Alex in that I think they're a little bit overpriced here. It's a good matchup against Lauer, but the Padres bullpen is pretty good behind them, so you certainly run the risk of them being limited, in the later innings of the game. But also, Alex mentioned the thing about Yankees fans, but in general, I do think that there's something to when you get these like standalone first, early games. I think you just kind of see ownership higher than normal because for whatever reason people want to roster those. Like you see it in basketball, you see it in baseball too. So I think you probably
dumb. It's 30 minutes before the next day. It's the dumbest thing ever, man.
Yeah, but
maybe if you want to make an argument for like the Thursday through Sunday football slates, it's still stupid as hell. But at least you got several days. In this case, you can't wait 30 minutes.
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of things maybe working to make the Yankees a little bit higher owned than they should be here. If you can get to like a Sanchez or a Torres, I think obviously they're good hitters in a reasonable matchup, but they're just expensive. And on FanDuel you don't need a catcher, so that makes Sanchez even a little bit more unpalatable, I guess.
All right. Second early game here. Unless you guys want to talk any Padre bats, any interest?
No, no, not really.
Alex?
they're super contrarian. I wouldn't go there.
All right. Well, how about we talk about this Pittsburgh and Cincinnati game? Great American Ballpark. Look, this is always a great park for hitting purposes, Alex. But once you start getting the temperatures rising, it's even better. And you're getting temperatures flirting with upwards of 90 degrees at Great American. And we have Jordan Lyles and Lucas Sims, who is not on the slate, old Atlanta Braves guy. Well, the totals on this one actually surprised me a lot, right? I expected the Reds, this was last night, like late last night before we had any implied totals here. I thought the Reds would be around, 4.7, and I thought the Pirates would be the one at 5. Well, the Pirates are up to 5, but the Reds have a 5.1 implied total against Jordan Lyles and our slight home favorites here. So Lyles has looked very good, but not getting much respect in these hot temperatures out in Cincinnati at all.
Yeah, I think the weather must have like a huge impact here because Lyles, his xFIP on the year is 3.85, which is considerably above average. So you'd expect that the Reds wouldn't have a team total nearly as high as they do. But I think what we're seeing on FanDuel is that the Reds ownership is kind of off the meter because they're priced so well. A lot of guys at the top of the order around like the high 2Ks, and I'm seeing a lot of mid-teens ownership. So I think I have them projected for 11% team ownership, but they only have a 4% chance of being the top stack with the 5.4 team total. So I think this might be a spot where it makes a lot of sense to take these guys in cash games, but they aren't going to win you money in GPPs.
Follow that up, Adam. Like I mentioned, and I actually had rattled off a statue the other day about how Lyles, almost all of his strikeouts this year have been swinging strikeouts. You wouldn't think that when just taking a cursory look at some of his, swinging strike and everything. But he has been good. But once again, the total's very high here. Do you side on these Reds bats against Lyles, or are you staying away from them?
I agree that they're probably better cash plays than tournament plays. You look at guys like Derek Dietrich at 2,700, Joey Votto's 2,900, both really, really nice price points for guys that are hitting, at the top or in the middle of a lineup with an over 5 implied run total in Cincinnati. But when you start to factor in the ownership and the fact that they're going to be the guys that are just spit out by optimizers, Jordan Lyles has a below 300 expected WOBA to hitters from both sides of the plate. He's struck out over 27% of lefties, over 25% of righties. He's been legitimately good this season. And, I think that when you talk about a slate this big and the kind of ownership that Cincinnati is likely to get solely because of a Vegas implied total and their price points, that you probably over the course of a season just make more money by being on other teams.
I'm with you. Any bats specifically in this game or pitching you want to talk about?
Definitely no pitching in this game I want to talk about. I think Gregory Polanco is a really interesting bat, as is Josh Bell, but both of those guys with nice park boosts going into Cincy, facing a fly ball pitcher in Lucas Sims. I think that's I'd rather kind of go to the left-handed power on the Pirates, maybe as a little bit of a contrarian option as opposed to the Reds in tournaments.
All right, Alex, you want to get into the weeds here or move on?
I'll just mention Jose Iglesias. He got a grand slam last night, so I think that recency bias might draw a lot of people to him, but he just really doesn't have a lot of power or speed, so that would be definitely a guy I'd fade if I was going to stack the team.
Speaking of recency bias, did you see Malik Smith steal second, third, and home? Just ridiculous, man. Unbelievable. 4 stolen bases out of the 9 hole yesterday. That didn't feel good. All right.
It was nice. It got me to go from cashing 1 out of 150 lineups to like 3.
Sweet. So what, you had like 2% Malik Smith?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. All right. You guys want to move on to the 7:05 slate, which is, to be clear, DraftKings and Yahoo are running the 7:05 and later, FanDuel the 6:35 and the 6:40 game. We good here, boys?
Yep.
All right, Adam, let's start with you. Baltimore and Detroit. Matt Boyd, Dylan Bundy. Look, you and I have been Bundy truthers for too long, and I don't know if it's something to even want to admit in public, but it has been true. I want to start with Bundy here, and I will with your totals for this game. The Tigers are at 4-6. The Orioles are 4-4, down from 4-7. So Tigers slight road favorites here. The thing about Dylan Bundy, though, is he does have strikeout upside, particularly against righties. Striking out almost 30% of righties this season. He's just a home run allowing machine. Now, where do you stand on Dylan Bundy on a day where not as many as you see sometimes, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 righties in the lineup for the Tigers? Your lefties or switch hitters are Nico Goodrum, Kristen Stewart, and Heimer Candelario, who's back with the team.
Yeah, I mean, I like Bundy here. It's kind of scary just because it is warm weather today in Baltimore, and we know he gives up a lot of home runs, and then his price tag has come up, at least on DraftKings and Yahoo, as a result of the matchup with the Tigers. He's still only $7,200 on FanDuel, which is nice if you're looking to save some money at pitcher. But on the 2 pitcher sites, I mean, there's just not a lot of pitching that you really like on this slate, or at least that I really like on this slate, especially when you consider the bats that we want to pay for and the price tags on some of the better pitchers. So Bundy does grade out as one of my better mid-range arms. You know, he's facing this Tigers team that is tied for the second highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this season. There are 6 righties in the lineup, like you said. And then out of the lefties, you know, Goodrum strikes out 29% of the time. Stewart's at 23.2%. So, you know, you get some strikeouts there. And the Tigers, while they have the second highest strikeout percentage against righties, they have the 3rd lowest ISO. And so it sets up really about as good as any matchup can for Bundy. Like you said, he has a 30.8% strikeout percentage against righties this year. He gives up power, especially to righties. He's allowed a 274 expected ISO. Sorry, I misspoke. 29.1% strikeout percentage against righties. But he's allowed, you know, a 274 expected ISO to righties, 132 to lefties, but fewer strikeouts to lefties. Just not a lot of right-handed power in this lineup. So I think that it's about as good a spot as you're going to get for him, and he grades out better than anyone priced around him for me.
All right, yeah, I mean, really the only thing here is that Bundy is projected to have ownership, which can be a little bit scary, but I do believe it's down from what it was earlier. Right now it's at 14%. Where do you stand on Dylan Bundy here, Alex?
I think that he's definitely a good play. I mean, the Tigers are kind of like I remember a couple of years ago the Phillies. It's like every single start they had, like you'd have whatever pitchers going up against them. This year it's the Tigers and it's the Marlins. So immediately you gotta think of Dylan Bundy here. Over the year, he's been about average as far as strikeouts. His xFIP is higher than average, but he has a pretty long track record of being a pretty decent pitcher. So I give him a benefit of the doubt there. The strikeout matchup's good, about 5% more than the average team. So I think all in all, you're seeing a pretty nice matchup. I think it is interesting to note that still the Orioles are money underdog to the Tigers tonight because Matt Boyd's on the mound and the Tigers have a team total of 4.9. So there's a pretty large possibility that Bundy will get blown up tonight. So I think it could make sense to stack against him too.
All right. Yeah, the big thing for me, when Bundy's facing lefty-heavy teams, I have a lot less interest. But once you get past that 1, 2, 3, I'm including Castellanos because he's good, but he has a righty. I mean, outside of the 1 and 2, you have one righty in the 3 through 9 hole. So I do think there's opportunity here for Bundy to have a solid game. But as you mentioned, Alex, it's not like this guy doesn't get blown up. And when he does get blown up, he gives up home runs. He doesn't get beat up on BABIP, bloop singles and grounders. He gives up long home runs, which always makes it interesting on the other side of this one. Any thoughts on hitters here, Adam?
I think Kristen Stewart.
Actually, I'm sorry. Sorry. What about Matt Boyd? We didn't. Alex mentioned it, but let's talk about him for a minute because he is one of the better overall pitchers on this slate.
Yeah, I think that on DraftKings and Yahoo, if I'm paying up for pitching, he'd be the guy that I want to pay up for. He's started to make strides at the end of last year, and it's carried over this year. He's 10th in PCRA this year. He is also 10th among all starters that have thrown at least 750 pitches. He's 10th in called strike plus swinging strike percentage. Everything grades out, really well for him. It's a good matchup against the Orioles, whose active roster since last season has the second highest strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching. A really good spot. The problem is just that there's bats to pay for on this slate, and I'm not sure how much I'll actually be able to justify paying all the way up for Boyd. And then on FanDuel, there's a bigger difference between him and Rich Hill than there is on Yahoo or than there is on DraftKings. So site dependent, and really will just depend on what team I'm stacking and what individual lineup.
Yeah. Do you have any interest in Boyd, Alex?
I think, the numbers this year have been amazing. 30% strikeout rate. The price is really top dollar, like $10K on DraftKings and FanDuel, $49 on Yahoo, so the value is not particularly good. One thing that's a bit of a red flag for me is that the sportsbook over-unders for strikeouts I've seen have been like 6.5, so a little bit less than I would have projected it for. So these guys are pretty smart. So I think there might be something to that, just like seeing a regression to in the strikeouts. And when you're paying top dollar and I see red flags like that, then that makes me want to avoid him a little bit.
All right, what about bats?
So the Tigers I like because the value is really good on. Value is really strong on DraftKings and FanDuel, and on Yahoo is pretty decent. But the team total 4.9 is good, but not inspiring of a ton of confidence. So I think what I'm seeing is that a lot of ownership is gravitating towards them, and I might look for a team that's a little bit more contrarian when I make my lineups.
All right, Adam, back to you here before I cut you off earlier. Orioles and Tigers bats. Thoughts on them?
Yeah, I think Kristen Stewart is pretty appealing. 3,400 on DraftKings is a nice price point. Bundy has done a much better job this year of limiting power to lefties. He's not striking them out, but he's basically doubled his changeup usage over last season, and so he's doing a really good job there. But Stewart does have power. He is cheap. And then Nick Castellanos, really the only right-handed power bat in this lineup. He's affordably priced. Bundy's giving up, tons of home runs as always. So if you are looking to get some leverage against Bundy without fully stacking this terrible Tigers team, I think Castellanos is a really good way to do it.
All right, sounds good. And yeah, I don't have any issues looking to Detroit bats here. I thought Bundy would be more popular earlier in the day, which would have made me like them more, but still no issues with Tiger bats against a guy that is homer prone and will give up plenty of shots if he doesn't have his stuff, which is often. All right, Philly, St. Louis, Adam, Nick Pivetta, and Adam Wainwright. You mentioned today in your deep dive article to me about your deep dive article, which everyone should read over at awesomeo.com, that you went on a tangent about why you don't think Nick Pivetta is a good play today. I think there are a few glaring and obvious reasons, but always appreciate the diligence going in depth here. So give us a taste of why Nick Pivetta, who's just been recalled, was DFA'd after 4 starts and is the 7th highest priced pitcher on DraftKings, is not a good play.
Yeah, so I think for one, it is site dependent here. It's a very boom or bust spot against the Cardinals. It's a pitcher in Pivetta who has really good stuff, but where he's locating is, who knows? And he has a tendency to get behind Nick Howitz and can get into a lot of trouble. But he's only $27 on Yahoo, so I do like him a lot there. I think that the risk is the risk is a lot less than the reward at that price tag. But on FanDuel, where you're rostering one pitcher and Dylan Bundy's not that much more expensive, and on DraftKings, where, like you said, he's really expensive, I would rather be getting to Cardinals here, even though Pivetta is a guy that I generally like. And the thing that really concerns me is that Pivetta, early in his career in the minors and in his first stint in the majors, he struggled with walks. And last season he did improve on that. He dropped his walk percentage a little over 2% down to like 7.5%. In his 6 starts at AAA this year, he struck out over 30% of hitters, but he also walked 13.3%. The Cardinals have the 9th highest walk percentage against right-handed pitching this season. So they're a team where if Pavetta's not getting ahead in counts, they're not likely to really help him out. And one of his glaring issues in the major leagues in the past has been that when he gets behind in counts, he'll abandon his breaking stuff, which is really good, and he'll just really rely on his fastball. This Cardinals team has basically an entire lineup of good fastball hitters. Pivetta lives around 94, 95 miles per hour on his fastball. And if you look at the league average expected WOBA and league average ISO against that, almost this entire lineup is better than average. Carpenter, Ozuna, De Jong in particular, very good fastball hitters. Molina and Wong have a lot of power against fastballs. Goldschmidt overall is just a really good hitter. It's a spot where Pivetta, if he's not locating really well and getting ahead in counts, that even though he is better against righties, he can just get absolutely blown up here.
All right. And yeah, I agree. Look, I don't believe that the wait and see approach is always the best approach. You want to get there first, and oftentimes that's what separates big money from nothing. But Alex, Nick Pivetta hasn't shown all that much this season, and it's not like a lot of these sites are pricing him reasonably either. Are you on Pivetta today?
No. I think I mean there's a lot of great values, and he's just like he's priced up super high on DraftKings. On FanDuel, it's one pitcher, so punting it doesn't make a ton of sense unless it's a really good option. And on Yahoo, I think Yahoo is the one spot where Pivetta is probably in play more than others because he's 27. It's two pitchers. He's only $2 above the minimum, and he does have a track record of getting pretty decent strikeouts. It hasn't really materialized in 2019 in the majors yet. But I think that as a contrarian low dollar play, he makes sense on Yahoo.
All right. What about the bats in this one? I don't think we need to spend much time on Wainwright. Alex, please feel free to stop me. But the Phillies have a 5-5 total here. Actually, last time I looked, and the Cardinals are up above 5-2. So expecting a lot of runs. I would say at least to pay some attention to the weather in this game. But right now you're getting 80-plus degree temperatures in one of the most homer-friendly parks that's in baseball. So what are your thoughts on hitters in this one?
For some reason, there are a couple of guys that are just inexplicably low priced. One is Bryce Harper, 4,300. He's like the lowest priced of the first five batters of the Phillies. Like, do they know who this guy is? Like, come on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then on the other side, Paul Goldschmidt, it's like almost the same situation. These guys are way underpriced compared to their talent level, and the weather, as you said, is really good. So those guys definitely great one-offs tonight. And I think the stacks have pretty good potential. You're seeing team totals of 5.4, 5.8. Those are well above average, and they're priced well on the sites as well. So I think those are definitely positive factors. I think the ownership is going to be there too, though. On DraftKings, the Cardinals are about 8% owned. On FanDuel, 7%. Or 5% on FanDuel, sorry. And then the Phillies are 7% and 6%. On Yahoo, they're both 5%. So above average ownership for the two teams here.
All right, Adam, what type of exposure are you getting to in this one?
I like both offenses, but on non-Yahoo sites, I like the Cardinals just because I think that it does have the potential for them to get in really advantageous spots. Like I think it's a spot where Pivetta either has his stuff and the Cardinals just absolutely do nothing, or he doesn't, and like the Cardinals just go nuts. I think it's a very polarized spot here, so it makes me like them, as a stack. But in particular, Matt Carpenter, who is starting to, maybe hit the ball a little bit better than he was earlier in the year, but does have a track record of being a very good hitter. He's inexpensive, but also the best fastball hitter on this team. And Pivetta has always been much better against righties than lefties. Against fastballs in Pivetta's velocity range since last year, 438 expected WOBA, 326 ISO for Carpenter. So he really stands out as a good play here. But also, Paul DeJong has been really good. The 19th best WRC plus in baseball this season. Goldschmidt's underpriced. Ozuna's a great fastball hitter. Colton Wong at a weak second base position actually is a really good fastball hitter with an ISO up over 200. So I think that the Cardinals in general are a really good spot, and I expect people maybe to get to Philadelphia a little bit more than the Cardinals. Harper, obviously really, really affordable, and I think it's a good spot for him because he's been striking out a ton this season. He's at like 34.5% against right-handed pitching, but what he's really been struggling with has been fastballs up and sliders that pitchers are able to bury and get him to swing over the top. Wainwright doesn't have a hard fastball anymore. He doesn't have a slider to bury on Harper. I think that he is going to have trouble exploiting the weaknesses the teams have found in Harper's swing, and that Harper really grades out well here.
Are you looking at Harper and guys like Goldschmidt? Alex mentioned their price points, like on DraftKings. Are you looking at them, if we're talking cash games, as, guys that you should be looking to definitely plug in the cash lineups?
Yeah, I think that those guys, cash or tournaments, are fine because they're clearly underpriced. They're clearly good point per dollar plays, but they also have monstrous upside. The one guy from this game that I think I would make a distinction on is Dexter Fowler, leading off for the Cardinals. I think he's a perfectly fine cash game option, leading off for a team with close to a 5 implied run total, with the platoon advantage against Pivetta in great hitting conditions. But I think that you're going to see him be higher owned in tournaments than he really should be, considering the fact that this is a below average hitter with below average power. And you do have some guys around him in price, like, Randall Grichuk or Shohei Ohtani, that are in tougher matchups but have significantly more power. So he'd be one guy where I make a pretty big distinction between cash and tournaments.
All right, sounds good. And I think, this is a game that good amount of time should be devoted to just because of the super high totals at such a great park. We don't know what we're going to get from Pivetta, though. So you talk about it being a polarized spot. This could go one of many ways, especially being that we're already talking about a game where it's difficult to predict on its own. Alex, let's talk about Boston and Cleveland. David Price and Zach Plesac making his debut here for the Indians. Should come as no surprise to anybody, but Boston's got I think it should be the highest total outside of Coors. What are we at? We're at 5.3 now. Okay. Opened around 5.6, but a very high total for them. On the other hand, the Cleveland Indians against David Price, we got him at 3.8. And of course, the Boston Red Sox are huge favorites here at Fenway Park.
So this one is one, I think, there are a lot of signs pointing to it being a great game, except the weather. This is forecast to have light rain steadily throughout the night, and I think that there's a significant chance of a postponement here. I haven't updated the weather on the site yet, but usually I found when you have this kind of dark green on the radar looming throughout the night, teams tend to postpone and just wait for a better opportunity to play the game, barring circumstances where that would be logistically difficult. And since it's Tuesday, assuming they're playing tomorrow, so I don't see any logistical barrier to playing the game tomorrow. So I think this is one I'm going to cross off my list until unless I see some information to the contrary. Yeah, it's unfortunate because I was really looking forward to playing Zach Plesac in his debut, just like way underpriced on all the sites. And
I can't tell if you're serious or not.
I'm serious. I mean, he's got great great strikeout stuff in the minors, and I mean it's a really tough matchup. But he was priced at 4,500 on DraftKings, and that just makes it really easy to stack your lineup with some sick bets. So,
all right. What about you, Adam? We have a spot that, as Alex mentioned, is definitely looking like it's going to be affected by rain. This is seemingly the worst of all of them right now, and also it's not looking like it. You don't have warm temperatures either. You're looking like low 50s if this game were to actually reach first pitch. But I'm looking at the radar loop, and it looks like whether it's light rain or not, which it looks like you have a little bit of light rain and then some heavy spot. It looks like we're just going to have rain like all throughout the night.
Yeah, so one thing to point out there is that generally in games like this, if the way I'll approach it is if they don't start in a delay, I'm going to just assume the game goes, because I think it is mostly light rain throughout and the weather conditions aren't really going to change, I don't think, from first pitch. But if they announce that they're starting in a delay, then I basically will just pull everything because I don't think it clears up at some point for them to play. So definitely keeping a close eye on it, because if it's going to go, I do think that Plesac is a really, really good option. just because of the price tag. There's not much pitching that stands out as like great upside at their price points. And on slates like that, I am fine just kind of grabbing the cheapest pitchers that I can. I've rostered some really, really not talented pitchers at 5K price tags, and Plesac actually does have some talent, although it's a really tough matchup. His walk rate's really low, which is nice because the Red Sox are a patient team. They are a team that'll take walks, but also you clearly don't want to be putting extra guys on base against them. So that, even though I don't think there's a lot of strikeouts in this Red Sox lineup, the fact that I don't think he walks a bunch of guys, makes me pretty happy to get to Plesac at $4,500 on DraftKings if this game goes. I would say that on Yahoo, I'd rather roster Pivetta at $27.
Okay, fair enough. All right, quickly, because this game looks like it's probably in bad shape. Any thoughts on hitters?
Boston, obviously facing a guy making his major league debut who throws a lot of strikes in Fenway has tons of upside. I think that if Plesac were to get a lot of ownership, which I don't really expect at all, but if that were the case, then I would lean towards getting more Boston in. But assuming that people are going to shy away from a guy in his debut against the Red Sox, I would just get more Plesac.
Okay. We'll stick with you, Adam. Toronto, Tampa Bay. Ryan Yarbrough looking to be the long guy here. Clayton Richard making his second start of the season. Was activated last week, went 4 innings, 1 run. Struck out 2, threw only 54 pitches. But, Yarbrough was sent down earlier this year. He comes back up. Makes a start, his first of the season last week, throws 99 pitches, goes 7 1/3 innings. But the problem is, in long relief, we've seen Kevin Cash, just this whole organization, use them so oddly and with such a low level of predictability as far as pitch count goes. So how do you gauge this pitch or this matchup for a guy like Yarbrough? I mean, it's not a bad matchup against Toronto. It's just he's not cheap, and at least not on DraftKings. You're not going to play him on FanDuel. Maybe you are. You can talk about it. And then on Yahoo, he's also 37, so he's not really discounted there either.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue for me is just the price tag. I think that it is a nice matchup against Toronto. I think Yarbrough is a good enough pitcher. It is a good park, but I just get really nervous about paying $8,300 for a guy who I really don't have a good grasp of how deep he's going to, or how many pitches he's going to be allowed to throw. He threw 99 last start, but as you said, even going back to last season, we see some games where he throws a lot more pitches than he does in other games, and you're basically paying top dollar for Yarbrough. Like, he's never going to really be more expensive than this. So on a slate with so many games, I think I can just find pitching options that, while they may not be very good, they, at least if they pitch well, I know that they're going to be allowed to throw 100 pitches.
All right. What are your thoughts here? Pitching, and feel free to transition into hitting, Alex, for Tampa Bay, Toronto.
I think Yarbrough is in play on DraftKings and FanDuel at moderate prices. I think Toronto is not really the most scary matchup with a team total of 3.9 and a strikeout percent that's about league average. So I think that is a viable play. As far as offense, with the over-under at 8.5, and I'm not really tonight's the night with a lot of high team totals. So the Rays have a team total of 5.2. That's not really the greatest spot. On FanDuel, I'm seeing that the Rays have some really good prices, which is definitely a nice boost. So if the ownership projection stays low for them, I think that would be a nice contrarian play. But otherwise, I'm not seeing a lot from this game.
Yeah, me neither. Do you target any bats here, Adam?
I think I have a little bit more interest, mostly in one-offs. Clayton Richard gives up power to righties, and you have Garcia and Pham at the top of this order with power, but also you have Travis d'Arnaud batting 5th at $2,500 on DraftKings. I think he's at the very least a good cash game option at catcher on sites where you need one, especially because the Astros don't have Robinson Chirinos in their lineup, so you lose what I think was the best catching option on the slate. So I like saving money for d'Arnaud batting 5th. But then on the other side, you get Vlad Guerrero at $3,700. He clearly has the power to hit the ball out in any park, so I'm not too concerned about that. And he's just, a more talented hitter than that price tag.
All right. Yeah, I think there are a few discounted bats here, but aside from that, I don't have a ton of interest. San Francisco, Miami. Josh and I had joked this morning. It would take. You would probably have to get paid to go to this game, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you would. Look, maybe I'm wrong, but this is hardly an appealing spot, even if you're sitting behind home plate. Alex, Trevor Richards, Jeff Samardzija. I do want to talk about this pitching matchup, though, because, look, both teams have predictably low totals. Both of them below 4, and it's a very friendly pitcher's park. The thing is, Trevor Richards, yeah, he has a great changeup. We know that. Not a very good fastball. And it's unlikely that not playing him is going to kill you. He's 18% projected ownership on DraftKings right now. And on FanDuel, Trevor Richards coming in at 32% projected ownership. Meanwhile, Samardzija, 5% projected on FanDuel or on Yahoo, and over on DraftKings, he is at 10%. He's cheaper than Richards, who seems a little bit overpriced given his lack of high ceiling. Are you going to either of these guys with any frequency?
I could definitely see myself ending up on them.
Me too.
More likely on Richards. His strikeouts on the year are a little bit below average, but facing San Francisco, one of the weaker offenses, I think that gives him a pretty good shot to go deep in the game and get some fantasy points. Just by getting a few strikeouts and not giving up a lot of runs. It's coin flips. I think, both teams have around a 4-team total. The price is about moderate, 8,200 on DraftKings, 7,500 on FanDuel. So I think he's definitely in play, not the kind of guy you get super excited about. And San Francisco is not a great strikeout matchup. On the other side, Samardzija, he had that crazy stat line the other start when he struck out like 8 guys, gave up like 7 runs, but only 1 earned run. So he was like the nuts on the sites.
0 earned runs, actually.
Was it really?
Yeah, it was. I'm looking at it now. 0 earned on 6 runs allowed with 7 strikeouts, 6 innings, and 23.3 DraftKings points. That's crazy.
That is one of the strangest things I've ever heard of. But anytime you have a guy facing Miami, you gotta have some interest. Samardzija hasn't been going super deep in games and hasn't been getting a lot of strikeouts. It's just the matchup that's appealing. And on FanDuel, I probably wouldn't go that low. I think there's some other value options that are better. On DraftKings, he's not a great value, and he's getting projected ownership, so I prefer to go to a guy like Richards.
Okay. Adam, is Richards a better play at $500 more on DraftKings than Samardzija than you? And the reason I'm not really talking FanDuel here is because these guys don't have a whole lot of value on a single pitcher site, especially where Hill and a few other guys are very reasonably priced. On Yahoo, where you play 2 pitchers, Richards is $34 and Samardzija is $40, so that wouldn't even be a conversation. But what about on DraftKings?
Yeah, I think even on DraftKings, I prefer Richards. I just think he's the better pitcher than Samardzija. I think he has better strikeout stuff. So far this year, he's only struck out 15% of lefties. But since last year, he's up between 21 and 22% of lefties, about 24.5% of righties. You get a pretty balanced lineup from San Francisco. But, again, it's a good park, and it's a team that doesn't hit very well. So I would put Richards a little bit ahead of Samardzija, just because I think he's better. I would put both of them behind Bundy at this price range in terms of upside. I think Bundy just has the best strikeout stuff out of any of them. I think Richards, quote unquote, is a little bit safer just because of the park and matchup. But again, safety is not really a real thing in baseball. So I would say that for me, it's Bundy, then Richards, then Samardzija.
Okay, yeah. Like you mentioned, there's definitely better strikeout upside. I also don't think that not having Richards is like a death sentence either. I just say it because you look at this guy and he struck out what? Under a batter per inning, but close. It's just you have 5 lefties in here. I don't know. I would expect him, 5 strikeouts or so in this game, which could be worse. Are you guys any bats here? Any hitters?
No.
All right. Alex?
I think there's some good value, but it's pretty tough to imagine like paying down on bats and not a pitcher tonight. It's probably I wouldn't go there.
All right. Adam, Atlanta and Washington, Steven Strasburg and Max Fried. Strasburg, this is not one of the highest price tags we've seen on DraftKings in a while for any pitcher. I mean, even the Garrett Coles have been less expensive than that, and the Scherzers and Chris Sales. But he's 11.8, highest priced pitcher on Yahoo. Strasburg, also your highest priced pitcher at 53. And on FanDuel, nothing different here. You're getting Steven Strasburg at 10.6 as your highest priced arm. What are your thoughts on Strasburg in this matchup against Atlanta? It's funny because it's always a spot where I'm like, yeah, he won't get any. It's a tough strikeout matchup. And then he goes every time he faces Atlanta and strikes out 10 or 11 of them.
I think it's a really interesting tournament spot because of Strasburg's price tag. At 11.8 on DraftKings and 53 on Yahoo, I think that he's pretty clearly a luxury more than a necessity. And I think that like the optimal build would be to not allocate that much money to pitcher. But at the same time, you're getting what has been one of the best pitchers in baseball this season in Strasburg, who's pretty clearly taken a step forward from already being a good pitcher. His strikeout percentage is up a couple percentage points this year. His walks have gone down. He's fourth in called strike plus swinging strike percentage. He's fourth in PCRA this season. Everything is just, points to him being a legitimate ace, and it's a tough matchup. And he's expensive, so people aren't going to roster him, I wouldn't think. We have him projected right now for like 7% ownership on DraftKings. I think that in tournaments that's kind of interesting, especially if like the Cleveland-Boston game goes, and you can just go like Strasburg plus Plesac for $16,000 and still get good hitting, to be able to get contrarian with the best pitcher on the slate. But outside of, just kind of tournament ownership considerations, I don't think that Strasburg is necessary.
Yeah, if I compare him with a cheap arm, knowing that his ownership is projected to be so low, I do have interest. But he is very expensive, Alex, and it's not the greatest matchup. It's just you'd be paying for talent over anything else.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors like the opposing team total and the fact that the Braves don't strike out above league average that make me pretty hesitant to go there, and I find that trying to go contrarian by spending up on a really high-priced pitcher, that kind of hurts the rest of your lineup even more because you get those value bats, and I think spending up on batters is usually a better strategy as far as equal points per dollar.
Are there any bats in this game you want to spend up on or play?
Acuna is always interesting because he's got that mix of power and stolen bases. And he's pretty cheap on all three sites, so I think that he'd be a nice one-off. The fact that the stack is probably going to be minimally owned is also appealing for taking him as a one-off, so I think that's interesting. On the other side with Washington, Trey Turner has that stolen base upside, but I'm not really seeing anyone else jumping off as far as a good play.
Adam, hitters here?
Not really. Turner at shortstop I think is okay. Rendon's more expensive than I want to get to. Acuna, I agree, is reasonably priced. Obviously a tough matchup, but just a really good player for a mid 4K price tag. Not a whole lot here. Like I have a lot of respect for Max Fried. I have respect for the Nats, which is why I'm not really expecting to get to Fried. And then I obviously have a lot of respect for Strasburg.
Okay. And we can move on because we still got 7 games to get through. The next one on the list, Minnesota, Milwaukee. Alex, Martin Perez has been legitimately good this season. That doesn't mean he'll have as easy of a time going up against a good Milwaukee Brewers lineup. Lorenzo Cain, Christian Yelich, Ryan Braun, the switch hitting Yasmani Grandal, Mike Moustakas, Jesus Aguilar, Hernan Perez, Guerra, and Orlando Arcia. That is what we've got penciled in for Milwaukee. And then our pitching for Milwaukee, we've got Zach Davies, who came back down to earth last game and has, in my opinion, pitched over his head this season. What do you make here? Oh, you know what? Is Perez?
It's Devin
scratched, right? Or he was moved back?
Yeah.
Pushed back, yeah. So who do we have starting here?
Devin Smeltzer making his major league debut.
Okay, yeah, thanks. I forgot about that. All right, so no Perez, but we do have Zach Davies. What are your thoughts, Alex, on this one here in Minnesota?
I think the bats are interesting. As far as pitchers, you can't get Smeltzer on any of the sites. Not that you'd ever want to. Um, Davies I've projected even lower than Smeltzer in fantasy. I think I'm seeing some good value on Milwaukee side, especially Ryan Braun at 3K on FanDuel, really jumping off the page, and then Hernan Perez at $7 on Yahoo. Those are two guys that seem quite underpriced. With Minnesota, they've been pretty hot recently, and I think the price tags reflect that more than the pitching matchup. So I think on all three sites, they're just way too high priced for their potential tonight.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Adam?
Yeah, when I was going through when I was like making my player pool to write in the deep dive article, I realized I didn't really have anyone from Minnesota, and so I started like adding them in, and then I looked again at their pricing and was like, oh, that's why I didn't have them. They're in a good spot. Like, I don't think Davies is good. I think he's a pretty average pitcher, but you're paying some of the most expensive prices on the slate as a full stack, and you need a lot to go right for that to work out here. Milwaukee, though, I do really like because they're priced. I don't know if they're priced down for Perez or if they're just cheap in general.
I'm assuming they're priced down a bit for Perez.
Yeah, that's my guess as well. But like looking on DraftKings, you have 4,100 for Kane, 4,400 for Braun. Both of those are really appealing, especially Braun, who still has tons of power in this platoon split. But you get Jesus Aguilar hitting sixth for 2,900. I think that's a good point per dollar option that also gives you some upside. The bottom of this Milwaukee order, if you are looking for a cheap stack that has upside, Aguilar has power, Perez has power and speed, Ura has power. That's guys that are really cheap and give you upside in tournaments, and because they're at the bottom of the order, at least Perez and Keston Hiura will probably be pretty contrarian. So I think there's a lot of different ways to get creative with the Brewers. I think it's an appealing spot against Smeltzer, who Steamer projects for 6.4 strikeouts per 9 innings in the majors. He wasn't striking guys out in his few starts at AAA. I think it's a spot where Milwaukee is pretty clearly underpriced.
Yeah, I think so too. And they're loaded with power here. I do like your right-handed hitters a little bit more because the righties in this lineup generally hit lefties really well. I'll also say that the Twins bullpen this year, because I don't know what type of work Smeltzer's supposed to get, but pretty middle of the road in most categories. I don't really know. I mean, they've been good, not great. Adam, there's nothing that stands out as fantastic. They have done a very good job as a unit of preventing home runs, though. Bottom 5 in home runs per 9.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Smeltzer is stretched out. I mean, he's been starting in the minors, so he could very easily get knocked out of the game early. But I don't think the plan is for him to go 2 innings or something.
Yeah, I was thinking more so along the lines of 4, but who knows? Looking at another one here, Alex. Houston and the Chicago Cubs. John Lester, Corbin Martin. Martin's first start was really promising. 9 strikeouts, 2 earned, 5 1/3 inning against Texas. And then he really struggled against Boston. Only allowed 2 earned, but didn't strike out a single batter. And then didn't make it through the 4th inning against the White Sox in his last appearance. So, he struggled to go deep into games to start. He doesn't have a long leash at all. And now he's got the Cubs, but a Cubs team that you would think, I would think at least, would have a bit of a higher total. What are they at right now? See if it's moved at all. Do you have the total right? 4.2 for the Cubs, 4.9 for Houston. Houston, a decent home favorite here. First of all, before we get into bats, are you looking at any pitching? Alex?
I'm not, no. I think this is kind of a little bit of a Manny special, just like with teams with the middle of the road pricing, middle of the road team total. But especially the pitchers are a little bit overpriced. Some of the bats I think are very appealing. So with the pitchers, you got Corbin Martin. If you add up all 3 starts, he's struck out 21%, and that's a little bit below average. He's facing a tough team that strikes out a little bit below average, so not a lot of potential there in my opinion. As you guys mentioned, he had that 1 start where he killed it, but I went back and looked at his minor numbers, and they suggested that the 21% he's had this year was a little bit more realistic based on his performances in previous years. Lester, about average strikeouts. The one thing that is driving me away from him is that, I mean, Houston's a tough matchup, but they only have a team strikeout rate of 19.5% with their current lineup, and that is about 20% less than average. So that would be a reason why I wouldn't take a guy who's just average in a really below average matchup.
All right. Yeah, Houston's active roster against lefties specifically 20.2% strikeouts, 11.5% walks. So, Adam, that's not particularly good if you're an opposing pitcher. But I mean, look, I will say this much: not having and this is less me recommending a guy like Lester, and more so pointing out that not having Springer and Altuve at the top of the lineup has clearly hamstrung the Astros in a lot of decent spots over the past week or so.
Yeah, I'll take it a step further and actually recommend Lester as an FP2 in tournaments. This Astros lineup is not good. Like, Lester is
rough.
Yeah, so I mean,
no Ledmys Diaz either.
No Diaz, no Carlos Correa. They have Alex Bregman. That's what they have. Like I came into today when I listed the Astros as one of my favorite stacks, contrarian stacks in the deep dive article, because depending on how it looked, like I thought they'd have Chirinos in there, I thought they'd have Correa in there. Neither of those guys are in this lineup. Lester has improved his strikeout stuff against righties this year. He's increased his cutter usage. He's due to start giving up some power. His expected WOBA and his expected ISO are both much worse than his actuals, but I don't really know that starts here. But you have 4 left-handed hitters in this lineup with Fisher, Brantley, Kemp, and Stubbs. So that's that works in Lester's favor. White has struck out almost 30% of the time against left-handed pitching since 2017. Mayfield projects for a 23% strikeout percentage. Marisnick's up above 30%. And Lester's not expensive, and there's not great pitching on this slate. If he's not going to get ownership here, I actually have some interest mixing him into that group of Samardzija and Richards.
I don't think it's crazy. I really don't. It's such a low case. What you may have just pointed it out. Sorry, I was trying to look at something else and multitask. Are there any strikeouts here?
Yeah.
So
since 2017, Derek Fisher has only 55 plate appearances against lefties, but he struck out 30.9%. Marisnick has struck out 32.6% in 258 plate appearances. Kemp is at 20.8%. Tyler White's at 29.8%. The problem is that, so like as an average, it's still going to be low because Alex Bregman's at 12.8, Brantley's at 12.7, Gurriel's at 7.3. But there are still strikeouts in here because half the lineup has strikeout percentages up near 30%.
Right. Makes sense to me. But yeah, you're looking at a team with Marisnick, Garrett Stubbs, Tony Kemp, Jack Mayfield, Derek Fisher. It is not a murderer's row of hitters at all. Alex, what are you doing with hitters in this game? And are you turning to a Lester, or are we just looking at bats? Or, hey, are we looking at nothing? Because I know you got a pretty cheap Schwarber atop the lineup. Anthony Rizzo batting third. He is pricey, but pretty favorable spot. What are you doing?
I think the Houston bats are pretty appealing. One guy that stands out on FanDuel and Yahoo in particular is Derek Fisher, leading off. Lefty, so I'm not expecting a lot of power here, but he has good stolen base numbers, and Lester not very good compared to your usual left-hander at keeping runners. So I think that that's promising, and the price tag is min price on FanDuel and Yahoo, so just leading off, if it was any guy, I mean, that would be pretty appealing.
Anything for Chicago?
The Houston bottom of the lineup, too, is also pretty appealing. Gurriel, White, and Mayfield are all bargain bin bats on DraftKings and FanDuel and Yahoo. So I think what I'm expecting with this new lineup is the ownership's going to be pretty high. They're going to have pretty decent potential, but maybe one of those teams with the ownership exceeds the potential. On Chicago, I think Schwarber leading off is underpriced, but the rest of the team looks to be priced pretty high with Baez, Rizzo, and Contreras all above 5K on DraftKings, and 4K on FanDuel, and they're in the 20s on Yahoo. So I guess for some reason they're priced like Corbin Martin is some like terrible pitcher, but he's maybe a little bit below average, so I'm not really seeing him.
All right, Adam, quickly, any interest in Cubs bats?
Not really. I mean, I think Schwarber is underpriced, but that price range in the outfield is just absolutely stacked, and he's not one I'd be prioritizing. Jack Mayfield at 2K is like the value option that really stands out here. He's not someone that I would really want in tournaments because he's not a good hitter. He's 28. There's nothing really appealing, but he does save you some money if you need that.
All right. We go back to you here, Alex. Colorado and Arizona, unsurprisingly, two of the higher totals on this slate. Colorado going up against Merrill Kelly. I know Josh earlier this morning said he was going to have some Merrill Kelly here at low ownership against the Rockies at Coors. And Antonio Senzatella, who is not very good. He's going up against the Arizona Diamondbacks, starting off a new series at Coors Field. Let's talk about this one. You know what? And we'll just cover it in total instead of going pitching, hitting. Just tell me where you're at on this game, and then I'll throw the same question to Adam.
So the weather is a little bit problematic here. Colorado has a track record of playing through some pretty bad weather, and this is kind of mild, so I think more likely than not the game's going to play, but there is rain kind of forecast in that baseball range all throughout the evening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this game in until 30 minutes before the game locks and then reevaluate. That happened to me earlier this season, and I had to switch out all the guys because the radar got worse. Hopefully that won't happen because that's always a pain in the butt. But Fantasy Cruncher Lace Optimizer is pretty handy there. So we got 2 team totals over 6. On DraftKings, the Colorado guys, DraftKings and FanDuel and Yahoo, the Colorado bats seem a little bit underpriced. On the 3 sites for Arizona, they seemed a little bit more expensive for some reason, with the Arizona top of the order on DraftKings in particular, 4 guys above 5.5K, which is pretty much the highest I've ever seen, and I don't really know exactly why. So a lot of potential. Colorado will be the better value in the higher owned team, and Arizona is interesting as kind of a contrarian, high-priced, pay up to be contrarian spot.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, you are paying a massive premium for Arizona bats here. While it's a good matchup in a great park, you're not getting a Diamondback stack with any value if you're playing them. You would be hoping simply that their ownership is low because nobody can fit in that much high-priced hitting.
Yeah, I mean, Arizona, I think, is just, as a full stack, at least if you're going to the top, is just a little bit too expensive. I think that Christian Walker as a one-off is good. Senzatella struggles some with right-handed power, and Walker has plenty of it. Plus, it's really difficult to strike out against Senzatella, and Walker strikes out a lot. So I think that works in his favor. But the Colorado side is where I'm really interested. They are underpriced with the exception of Arenado and Story. And Arenado and Story obviously are excellent hitters. Tapia is cheap leading off. David Dahl, I think, is one of the better values on the slate. He has power, he has speed, and he's one of the cheaper bats in this lineup. McMahon has some pop in his bat. So I think that Colorado's the side that I'd want to get to here. The weather isn't appealing for hitters, but I think that the combination of cold weather and some rain and so many offenses on the slate means that you could see Colorado be lower owned than a 6.5 implied run total normally is.
Yeah, Trevor Story is so good that he struck out 5 times against David Hess in a Baltimore Orioles bullpen. What a disaster that was.
The Orioles have some of the best pitching in baseball. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Oh my God, it was brutal. Hess had 5 strikeouts through the first few innings, and all 5 of them were against Story and Arenado. It's just brutal. Oh, man. And they still covered. They still went over the 7.9 run total they had as well with 8 runs. That game was just dreadful. Anyway, talking Oakland and the Angels. Before we do, you hear us talk about Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, our sponsor. If you haven't checked them out yet, definitely would advise you do so. But if you do it, use the link that we're about to drop in the YouTube chat right now use the code AWESOMO as well. Get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, those YSRPs. And when you do it, that's right, you can use those 30 YSRPs as currency on the site to play as real money and then withdraw as real money after you win real money on Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Lower management fees than almost all of these sites. No, actually, probably than all of them. No MME, no 150 lineups, 10 entry max in most of these, or all of them that are guaranteed to run. Like the 10K guaranteed tonight, where $2,000 goes to first place. You're only competing against 1,137 other entries compared to 50,000. So there's a true advantage for anyone hand building lineups, not looking to crunch, doesn't have the time, or just wants to enjoy playing DFS without having to go up against 150 sharks every night. Way to do it is over at Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Use our link, use the promo code AWESOMO, and get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports rewards points when you deposit. All right, here we go. Oakland, LA Angels. Adam, to you, sir. Frankie Montas, a nice 11,300. Alex, you're getting comments on your loud keyboard.
Oh, sorry. I was just tweeting out some weather information. So I'll make sure you follow my account, Awesome on Weather.
Yes, you have tweeting out or breaking your keyboard.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to hear everything at work. So I guess I could have muted it. I'll have to work on my production skills here.
That's too good. Hearing everything at work. All right, Montas, a really nice 11.3 price point, Adam. I haven't seen him this cheap in a while on DraftKings. I feel like they've missed something here, and probably the best value on the slate against an Angels team that strikes out a lot. I don't know. Everything lines up really nice for Montas here.
Yeah, really. I mean, I think Montas is a good pitcher. I think that he's always been good at getting outs, and now he has a legitimate strikeout pitch, but not.
Well, his fastball is always sitting high. By the way, I was being facetious.
No, I know.
All right. He's got a high 90s fastball. Look at the whiff rate over these games where he's getting strikeouts. The fastball's finally missing back, and it never did.
Well, he added a splitter now that he's throwing like 20% of the time to lefties, getting misses on that as well. So I think that he's a really good pitcher, just not the spot for him here against at an expensive price point against an Angels team that doesn't strike out. That said, I don't have a whole lot of interest in Angels bats, with the exception of Shohei Ohtani, who is $14 on Yahoo, $3,300 on DraftKings. He's a guy that I think you can use as a tournament pivot to Dexter Fowler. Like, he just has so much more power than Dexter Fowler does, and he's going to be lower owned because people aren't stacking the Angels like they are the Cardinals. So I do like Ohtani in tournaments.
What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I think Ohtani seems extremely underpriced on DraftKings, probably a cash game lock. As far as Oakland, they seem like they have the better potential. The prices are very good on DraftKings and Yahoo, and pretty good on FanDuel. And then the ownership is about in line with their potential tonight. So I think that Oakland seems pretty appealing as kind of a middle-of-the-road price stack.
All right. We're going to take this up to 5:35, by the way, and then turn it over to the Live Before Lock crew. That's Jake and Chris tonight. They're going to take you up to, I guess, FanDuel Lock. Maybe they'll go later. Who knows? Maybe you'll get a surprise. Anything else on this one, guys? Alex just mentioned the bats for Oakland. I agree there's some interest here, and these guys have been pretty cheap across the board recently. What are your thoughts on hitters, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think Oakland is still underpriced for how much power they have. The one thing that I guess is worth pointing out, like, it's not a good it's not a good park for power. The weather doesn't really play it up either. But also, like, I hadn't had a chance to crunch lineups before this show because of us starting early. But as we've been doing the show, I've been kind of just playing around with DraftKings roster construction by hand. And it's actually, there's a lot of underpriced hitters. It's been pretty easy to get, bats that I like and pitching that I like. So that makes, I think, having a cheap stack in an unappealing spot like Oakland a little bit less valuable, just because it's not getting you anything much different than you can get with some other stacks. But if you did need a cheap stack, they do have power. They're especially appealing on Yahoo, where Matt Olson's only $12. Chapman and Piscotty are both $14. So there's certainly power upside there against Tropiano, who can give up some long ball.
All right. White Sox and so this is funny, by the way. I guess DraftKings just moved it to 10-10, but like it says 10-10 on here, and all of the games are X'd out, but the game is still on the scroll up top. So we only have two to talk about: Dodgers and actually no. I mean, should we get into this? What do you think? Because FanDuel still got it up there. I know we broke it down at the top, just kind of what we're doing and what we expect to happen. Should we break this down, given that FanDuel still hasn't? Actually, let's see here. Have they? No, I mean, at this rate, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it appears Yahoo still has it too.
Yeah, I guess we got to talk about it.
I don't think there's a lot to talk about either, so it should be quick.
Well,
I think
I mean, the way you talked about Giolito or like Montes being actually good, I believe the same thing about Giolito.
Yep.
I really think he has a good slider and he has good breaking stuff, and it's finally all coming together for him. What are your thoughts on this, Adam? As far as a guy like Giolito goes, I know he's expensive, and on DraftKings you're not playing him anyway. You can't play him. On FanDuel, he's coming in at 9,400, and then over on Yahoo, Giolito weighs in at 46, only $1 less than Rich Hill, and $1 more than Frankie Montes, $2 more than Bundy. Break the pitching matchup down. I'll go to Alex for hitters, and then we'll move on. We got two to go here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's an appealing tournament play on Yahoo. I think Giolito is legitimately good. He's always had the stuff, and it seems like he's finally put it together. He has struck out 28.5% of hitters so far this season. And with him being priced really close to Rich Hill on Yahoo, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you got him at an ownership discount just because of the amount of questions surrounding this game. I could see people just, kind of just saying screw it and going to the guy that they're comfortable with in Hill. And I think Giolito has just as much upside as Hill does. So I do like Giolito on sites where the game is playing, especially on Yahoo, where I guess we're operating under the assumption that they're just starting the game whenever it starts, as opposed to giving you 0 points.
No, I don't know. It disappeared, and then I refreshed, and it popped back up on. Oh, you're talking about Yahoo?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess. I honestly don't know.
I think it's an interesting strategy to put Giolito in your lineup on FanDuel, and then if the game's starting before 8:10, then swap to Rich Hill since he's lower priced. I think that's a pretty good strategy because Giolito might dodge a lot of that ownership.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. What are your thoughts here? Just quick thoughts on this game, Alex, because we got two games that we know are going to be on the board today.
I think the bets are the problem is really going to be there's going to be 30 minutes in between the games. Who knows at what point the lineups for Game 2 are going to come out. So it's going to be really hard to make your lineup. It's going to be impossible before lock to make a lineup with these guys because you won't know who the lineup is. And then you're going to have about 5-10 minutes maybe to late swap everyone. So it's not really a feasible option for me trying to do that in a lot of lineups. But I think that the White Sox bats, there are a few that stand out on FanDuel, and on Yahoo they're very well priced. So, I mean, like, it's I think on Yahoo you could maybe do it. On FanDuel, the chances are this game won't count, and I'm not really sure how they're gonna handle it. Like, are you gonna be able to late swap at 8:08 if the game starts at 8:05? So. They haven't really discussed that. I assume you are, but maybe your guys are going to be locked in, and that would really suck.
By the way, quick correction. Live Before Lock starting at 6, going up to 7:05. So Live Before Lock with Chris and Jake is starting at 6, going up to 7:05. So we're not exactly up against it, but we don't want to go on forever either. Alex, we'll stay with you. Dodgers and the New York Mets. Very, very low total for the Mets here against Rich Hill. And then on the other side of this one, Steven Matz on the road against the Dodgers, who will likely run out a pretty formidable lineup with enough righties to make this difficult. What are your thoughts on Rich Hill? Obviously on FanDuel, he is totally underpriced.
Yeah, I think on FanDuel, he's like the obvious play. but I have him projected for 3.75 points per dollar. The main knock against Rich Hill is he doesn't go deep in games. Strikeouts are there. The matchup is good. The opposing team total is low, but he just doesn't go that deep. So I think he's a great value, but I could definitely see myself making a lot of lineups without him. I don't think you need to put him in at all. On DraftKings, he's significantly more expensive at 10.8K. So I think you can definitely go to some guys like Trevor Richards, Samardzija, or whoever else at a lower price point. So I think on FanDuel he'll probably be the highest owned and probably my highest owned pitcher, but I'm not sure you're going to get a huge edge over the field by taking him.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, on DraftKings, 10-8 seems to be a lot for a guy who is good for sure and has good strikeout stuff, but is also, very, very likely going to throw between like 85 and 90 pitches or somewhere in that neighborhood. I know last time out he threw 90, he threw a 96 at one point, but really 85, 85, 84, 90, that's pretty much where he is most of the time, unless he needs to get through an inning and he gets up to 95 or 96.
Right, which is why I think he's a perfectly good play on Yahoo or FanDuel, and I have zero interest on DraftKings.
Right, me too.
Like for him to be the best option on DraftKings, you're basically hoping he gives you, a good start, but then you're also relying on like Strasburg and Boyd and those guys to just completely to fail. Whereas on Yahoo and FanDuel, the price tag's reasonable, in a good spot against the Mets. This is a team that does strike out a lot. Hill has good strikeout stuff. If he qualified, he would have the 10th best PCRA in baseball this season, just ahead of Matt Boyd. So, he has been legitimately good, and we've seen that for years. It's just that it's tough to pay an elevated price tag on, limited pitches.
All right. Well, I guess we talk bats here. Unless you guys want to mention anything on Steven Matz, go ahead if you do. Nope.
I think the matchup is just not good for strikeouts. I mean, the Dodgers are above average and they don't strike out, so not much interest.
All right, what about hitters, Adam?
Kike Hernandez stands out for me as a top second base option. The position's really bad, and Kike is only $3,400 on DraftKings. He's $10 on Yahoo. For his career in almost 650 at-bats, he has been well above average against left-handed pitching. He has a 363 WOBA, 131 WRC+, 227 ISO. He's not really a base stealer, but he does steal 2 to 3 bags per season, and Matz is terrible at holding runners. So you do kind of have like a backdoor upside option there. Like if he doesn't homer, he can just steal a base potentially. I just think that he's too cheap, should be hitting towards the top of this order. And then I think Justin Turner is also a good play. Third base is a bit deeper than second base, so I think it should keep Turner's ownership down a little bit, whereas I expect Hernandez to be popular. But Turner, has plenty of power, and Matz, while he does get some strikeouts, he will give up on runs to righties.
Any interest in hitters here for you, Alex? Because I have no problem with right-handed Dodgers, and I think some of these guys are underpriced depending on what the lineup looks like.
Yeah, exactly. I think you nailed it. Like all the right-handed players are great values, and then all the left-handed players are kind of weak values. We don't have a lineup yet, so it's hard to say exactly who will be in the lineup. But I think you'd be pretty safe making a lineup stacking up with the righties. But the problem is, if everyone else is going to do that as well, there's going to be a lot of lineups like that floating out there because right now the projected lineup only has 5 righties.
Right.
If you're stacking the Dodgers, which I think is perfectly viable just because of how good they are, don't shy away from the lefties. Like Cody Bellinger has been the best hitter in baseball this year. Seager's above average against lefties over the last few years. Muncy as well. Like their lefties can hit left-handed pitching.
Yes, they can. Now, the last game here is an interesting one, Alex, because you have a guy in Marco Gonzalez who is not a big strikeout guy, but faces a Rangers team that really has struggled versus lefties this year. A lot of strikeouts. Their power's way down against left-handed pitching, just given how many lefties are in this lineup on a daily basis. And on a night where you have guys like Samardzija and Richards priced, I don't want to say priced up, but like Pivetta priced up. Somebody like Marco Gonzalez is down at $6,900 on DraftKings. On Yahoo, Gonzalez is 32. What do you make of him against the Rangers in a good park like T-Mobile?
I think I'm interested because of the price tag. The overall numbers aren't very appealing on the year. 16% strikeouts. The Rangers, I have striking out a little bit less than average here. Joey Gallo is an exception, but most of the Rangers don't strike out that much. And team total of 4.9 isn't great. The price tag of 6,900 on DraftKings is a little bit higher than I would like, but if that helps me get the stack I really want, I'd probably find myself going there.
What about you, Adam?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing for me. Not sure how necessary he is now that I've built a few more lineups on DraftKings. Not a ton of strikeout upside on his own, but you do get strikeouts from Texas, and that helps. It is a park that Gonzalez pitches well in because he's a fly ball pitcher, and it limits home runs. So I think that he's a perfectly fine point per dollar option. It's just that you're kind of hoping that he gives you like 7 or 8 like efficient innings, because you're probably not going to get him going out there striking out like 10 guys.
Right, yeah, almost certainly not going to get that, actually. The other side, you have Sampson looking like the long reliever here, Adam. What are your thoughts on hitters in this game? Again, not a great park, but you do have some potent bats in both lineups.
I like right-handed power from Seattle. Jesse Chavez gives up power to righties despite being right-handed, and then so does Adrian Sampson. He's been much better at limiting lefties than righties this year. So looking to guys like Encarnacion, Mitch Haniger, Domingo Santana, I think all offer a lot of upside. But then you also do have a couple of cheaper left-handed options with Kyle Seager, who's still really inexpensive, Omar Narvaez at catcher. So it makes it so it's a team that you can kind of stack and get a nice combination of value and upside. But if I'm targeting one-offs, I would actually stick to the righties.
All right, Alex, close us out. Any hitters from this one that you're going to be looking towards?
Yeah, I think the Seattle ones are pretty good. About fair prices on DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. So I think when I see about like the average points per dollar and they have a pretty good team total of 5.7, that's a spot where I might. I think it's worth it to sacrifice some value to get a little bit lower owned bats to have a great chance of success.
All right. Hey, before we head out, hit us with a thumbs up if you appreciate the show, you want to see more of it. It helps us out a lot. We greatly appreciate it and allows us to keep doing this over at awesomeo.com, which if you want to check out and get a 50% off your first month, use the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, Deeper Dive, for our ownership projections, player projections, the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, Fantasy Cruncher Pro, the lineup builder. There's so much. The deep dive article from Adam and myself, the stacks tool that we reference often here, that is Alex Baker's himself, and so much more. All of it on awesomeo.com. You can get for your first month, everything behind paywall, 50% off by using the promo code Deeper Dive, all one word, when you sign up and check out. Use that at checkout, Deeper Dive, one word. That'll do it for us. Live Before Lock is coming up next at 6 o'clock Eastern, going up to 7:05. We'll leave you with this. Top stacks. Adam, go ahead.
Cardinals. You'd think I'd be ready for this by now. Cardinals. Man. Phillies. Red Sox if that game goes. Brewers.
All right.
Oh, Rockies.
Go ahead. What?
And the Rockies. I would put the Rockies ahead of every team I just said except the Brewers.
All right. What do you have, Alex?
Colorado, I think, is chalk stack, and then for contrarian stack, I like Arizona.
All right. I'll add the Brewers in there against Smeltzer. We don't have Kansas City or Chicago in a lot of spots. I guess we'll leave it at that. That'll do it for us. We'll see you back here tomorrow, Wednesday's Deeper Dive, presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. Live Before Lock, Chris and Jake, 6 p.m. Eastern. Don't go anywhere. Peace.